And good evening. It is 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 26, 2018. I'll call this meeting to order of the Stow Board of Selectmen. And we will begin, as we always do, with public input on matters that are not on our agenda already. Anything? We have a good crowd. The usual, no public input. Okay. Chairman's comments. I do have a few things to cover. First of all, I wanted to just a few reminders of public forums that are on the way. The planning board is hosting a public forum on recreational marijuana tomorrow night. Where is that? I think
Pompo.
At Pompo. Does anybody know what time?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. And right now, the survey, a survey put together by the planning board, is available on the town website. And it can be found under News and Announcements section on the front page. I'd urge everybody to do that so we can start getting a handle on public opinion on this very important issue. Along the same lines, I want to mention the Economic Development and Industrial Commission is holding a job fair. We'll be hearing a little bit more about this later on Thursday the 28th between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., also at Pompo. This is a first-time thing. It is a bunch of area businesses with job openings and also just some businesses getting the word out about what they do. And it's a great opportunity to find out what is going on economically in our town and what's available locally. I wanted to mention that our police department is also hosting, once again, a Youth Fire and Police Academy on July 16th to 20th. I believe they already have a full class of 24 cadets and a waiting list. So it's obviously very popular. Their community project this year is to collect items to send overseas to our troops. And that is always a lot of fun. Frankly, it is something that the chair has always wanted to do. The word youth deters me. I don't know how they define it, but I may have to look into it.
However they define it.
However they define it, I probably don't mean it.
I think they have a separate definition for you. Right?
And on a more sad note, I want to mark the passing of Rick Connolly, former call firefighter and call captain, former Boston firefighter. He and I used to talk about that quite a bit because he knows that I was in the public employee retirement business, and that's very important to Boston firefighters. And currently, at the time of his death, an assessor. And just all around a nice guy. I interacted with him when he and I overlapped on the finance committee. He was on the CPC when I was liaison. Just a really nice guy who devoted a lot of his time to the town. He will be sorely, sorely missed. And I'd like to ask everyone for just a moment of silence in Rick's memory. Thank you. I should mention, Rick was, by reputation, a very good friend of Santa Claus. All right, moving on, we have some minutes. Maureen, thank you. I gave Maureen a couple of very minor comments the other day. Does anyone else on the board have any comments from Maureen on the minutes from our last meeting?
I was good looking. I'm sorry, I have one comment.
Mr. Ryan.
It was fourth page under liaison reports. Mr. Ryan mentioned he spoke with Chief Bosworth, and things were going well. I don't think I mentioned anything about Lower Village. Even though I might have meant to, but I didn't.
What page are you on, Mr. Ryan?
Page 4, liaison reports.
Oh, okay.
And I made, as the chair did, some comments just before the meeting.
Does anybody else have anything? Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Chairman, I move to accept the meeting minutes of June 12 meeting as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of June 12th meeting as amended. All those any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, nay.
I just
And-
abstain, 'cause I wasn't
And
here.
one abstention from Ms. Hegman. Thank you. Correspondence. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the correspondence? Are there any items in there that we want to mention for future agendas?
There's an email from Minuteman Vocational School that I have to take a look at. If there's anything, I'll bring it, of course, to the chair and my colleagues' attention.
Okay, thank you. Any else?
The only thing is that, the Fire and Police Academy that you mentioned,
Yes.
I haven't been able to find where they've got, anything posted yet about collection for the troops, but I'm thinking that other people in town might wanna know, so I'll try to get some more information for that.
Okay.
So,
I would imagine that might be part of the academy. I'm not hearing much else, and I have a full room, so I want to kind of move on if I can. Trying to see who I have more of here. I want to move the agenda around. I guess not. We'll go to our next item, which is the discussion of the signing of a bond anticipation note. Treasurer Pam Landry is here. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
how come every time we see it costs
And
us
Deb
money?
Scythe is here.
Yes, Deb Sykes is the assistant town clerk, and she's going to witness our signing. We're renewing the $492,000 bond anticipation note for the Lower Village road work. It's for 1 year. It was purchased by Century Bank at 1.89% interest.
And does anybody want to cover why we stretch out as much as possible the use of bond anticipation notes before actually bonding? Would the town administrator like to enlighten the public?
You'd like me to repeat myself again?
It gives everybody nice context.
It's a long-standing attempt going back several years when we were pricing up the Pompo project and knowing that we'd be retiring the Hale Middle School bond 2020. So we were trying to flatten out the curve on the trend line with regard to our debt load. So we're buying some time and at a lower price and amount for an annual payment. And we're stretching it out for that purpose.
It's part of our ongoing efforts to reduce the interest item in the budget by boosting up our credit rating, which is about as high as it can go, and by doing.
You can only go down from here.
You want to go down from here, and by doing things like this. So it's great. Anything you want to add, Pam?
No.
Questions from board members?
None.
Motion? If there are none, I'm ready for a motion.
Could we, I'd like to note that we have a new financial advisor. I think I had mentioned to you that we're in the process of doing that, and I think this is their first piece of work.
Yep, and they did it very quickly, because we just started with them last week.
Who's that?
Hilltop Securities. We used to have Eastern Bank, and they left the bond market business.
There's only a couple left in it with regard to financial advisor. And I take the opportunity to quickly note that my particular interest in Hilltop is that they're the only ones that I could find that actually have within their financial advisory services, the basis is OPEB consulting. So I probably will be coming to the special town meeting in October, and I'll share the proposal with the finance committee and the board on some services with regard to OPEB consulting. I just soon hand it off to professionals, and before the product is done, looking at a couple of samples, hopefully get a flavor of, speak to annual funding, annual required contributions, the actuarial numbers, the growth out and the rest of it. So that way we can let the professionals offer an opinion. As long as they're not requesting too much money a year to be set aside, I think I'll use it myself. We'll leave it to the board and the finance committee to decide.
Any further discussion?
Chairman,
I think Mr. Hawks has that comment.
I move to approve the sale of $492,000 bond anticipation note at 1.89% interest dated July 10, 2018, payable July 10, 2019, to Century Bank for the Lower Village project.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the sale of $492,000 bond anticipation notes at 1.89% interest. Interest dated from July 10, 2018 to July 10, 2019 to Century Bank for the Lower Village project. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, nay. And that is unanimous. And now do we have a little signing ceremony to go through
Yeah,
here?
and actually, the other good thing about this new company is we only have 2 pieces of paper to sign.
Oh, we should have used them years ago.
Oh, as
I was-
opposed to the regular bonds where there's...
Well, the regular bonds is a big stack, but
Right.
usually the other, we had 3 before on the bands.
I was disappointed with that aspect of it, but just for you guys.
You can always give us something to sign, Mr. Town. Sign anything you put forward.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
I want to impose on the Finance Committee to wait while I move, just because half of our emergency equipment is sitting in the parking lot. And I'd rather get it out on the road if I possibly can. Chief, you have an item here, an appointment of a new call lieutenant.
Yes. Judson's for it,
Want to join us?
Come on.
Good to see you. I think I remember voting to appoint you.
How are you? There's no extra pain in the box.
Nice to meet you.
So,
Oh. I'm assuming.
Just say, have a seat, both of you, have a seat. There's no formality.
yeah. So, this position was, we designed this position a couple of years ago, the training, call training, Lieutenant Barry Evers, Lieutenant Evers was doing that. He reached out to me a month or so ago, and he's starting to move out to, he wants to do some higher education, maybe look into some supervisory roles in the future, more on the higher end level, whether it be the captain's replacement or my replacement, maybe down the road. So the commitment that's there for this position is pretty heavy workload, and he's looking at going back to schools at nights and weekends and stuff. So he had reached out to me if we felt like we had a good enough candidate, because I do have to say, he had a passion for the training, and he developed an amazing program. And when it came down to looking within the group to see what we had, that Judd's an obvious fit for our operation. He did go through the process that we had held for promotional process in the past, but those were for shift lieutenants, and at that point, he really wasn't didn't have the time or the commitment, and we're at a point where he says that he has the time and the commitment for it. It's a very heavy workload. They design all the training, and that's for the full-timers, the daytime training, the shift work training, plus the monthly training for the call drills facilitates it. And along with that, they are a lieutenant, so they take essentially a voluntary shift once every 5 days. They're on from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They have to stay within reasonable response. They keep a phone on. They're contacted at all times. So there's a lot of demand, but Judd's, if any of you know, he's my administrative assistant. He was since I walked in the door. He's been in Stow for years, and he's a key part of the Stow Fire Department. And we're just kind of adding to his work.
So let's just take a moment
Yeah.
to express our appreciation of Barry, who I think, am I correct, he kind of created this position. He was the
Yes,
first one,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, he pushed.
And it's something not every call force has.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's a very comprehensive training program that he's developed.
And fair to say, Judson has some big shoes to step into.
Yeah, he's got a good head start, I will say. That's one thing we talked about. And Barry is still extremely engaged. He wants to be an assistant, he wants to help, the commitment of the full responsibility on his shoulders, along with, he has a very young family.
He's got
and,
the goals.
Yeah, and
Good thing.
he wants to further himself, so I commend both of them for, Judd for stepping up and Barry for recognizing and still wanting to move forward in the organization.
Justin, you were appointed when? A few years ago, right?
2012 for
Right.
full-time administrator.
I remember being on the board when you got appointed. You come from a long-time Stow family, is that correct?
No,
Okay.
just planted in. I think my credentials through schooling and was what got me into the administrative position.
Yeah.
He has a master's in emergency management, so that helps.
Questions, comments from the board?
How are you gonna feel when Barry tells you you're doing it wrong?
I'll accept his criticisms. He is a great mentor, and like you said, big shoes to fill, and I hope I'll do him proud.
I'm sure you will.
Tom, you wanna do it?
Lieutenant Swimmer, you want to introduce your wife?
Yeah.
Crystal Swimmer, who's going to be probably the biggest supporter of this, letting me out of the house more often than not.
And she's here to make sure that you are where you say you're going to be every 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day.
That's right. Making sure it's a
Very
real
prudent,
thing.
very prudent.
Crystal, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. On the recommendation of Fire Chief Joe Landry, I move that the board appoint Judson Swimmer as a call training lieutenant for the Stow Fire Department for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded on the recommendation of the fire chief to appoint Justin Swimmer as call training lieutenant for the Stowe Fire Department, one-year term, expiring on June 30th, 2019. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm here for everything
Thanks, Chief.
but money. Chief usually to come down.
And just
Everywhere's
remember, it's
a
only
big
a
lot.
one-year sentence. You can, at this point.
That's just so we can keep an eye on everybody else. All right, so maybe we will back up now to the FinCom item. I express my appreciation of Mr. Eckel for standing down, but we don't need him on the streets fighting fires and going to car accidents.
I have a soccer board meeting after this. That's about it.
No other members of your committee?
No.
Okay. So this is supposed to be a joint boards. What does that mean? It's really just a vote
At
of
this
those
point, I
present.
think they recorded a vote,
Yeah, we recorded a vote, which I,
so he can
He's
convey
conveying
that
the vote.
publicly, that they've recorded a vote. When it comes time to go through the process.
So let me
And I
tell,
witnessed it.
Well, I mean, I'd do it again.
let me tell folks playing along at home, the point of this is to appoint someone to the Audit Advisory Committee for the Nashoba Regional School District. The appointees are, help me out here.
Mark
one-
Jones.
Well, no,
Oh.
one from each town,
Yeah, there's one from each town. Yep.
and then one from the school district.
And then, yeah, and then there's one at large, I guess.
One at large. And we have one candidate, correct?
We supported one candidate, which was Mark Jones. He was on the school committee, and he was actually chairing the audit committee, which didn't actually meet very much last year because of some logistics. So we're looking forward to him having some great leadership and keeping him involved because he's a wealth of knowledge for the
Yeah.
budget. So we were excited that he was gonna. We invited him to do it. It was a 4-0 vote. We unanimously support his nomination, and so we're excited to have him if the selectmen agree.
Forgive me, I should know. Is Mark currently on the FinCom, or no?
No,
Okay.
he's
On the planning board, he's on the ZBA.
He's on the
right?
ZBA, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Formerly on the school committee.
Were there any other applicants? No. I don't think there were. I didn't see any.
Julianne North, who's a FinCom member, was the one last year. But we want to keep that knowledge close and.
So for this year, just Mark.
Just Mark, yep.
Okay. Further discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, in a joint appointment with the Finance Committee, I move to appoint Mark Jones as Stow representative to the Nashoba Regional School District Audit Advisory Committee to serve a one-year term ending June 30, 2019.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Anything further you want to add that you can cover? Motion made and seconded to appoint Mark Jones as Stow's representative to the Nashoba Regional School District Audit Advisory Committee for one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Yes, okay, that is unanimous.
All right.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank
you, sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rich. See you later.
He gets it all done. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next we have discussion about an appointment to the Veterans Graves Committee. Patty, you want to join us?
I'll stand up for this.
It's a brave method.
It's not as
easy as. To see you, thanks for stepping forward.
Oh, I thought you were wondering
Patty Bolton, please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be on the Veterans Graves Committee.
Tricia Bolton, I've been a 11-year resident now, I think, of the town. Moved here actually after my husband and I both got out of the service, and eventually landed in the area near family. He and I both served active duty for some time, both in the Gulf, Bosnia, you name it, Middle East. I can't even begin. But when we first came on board as second lieutenants, we both sat in an officer basic course, and that's when the Gulf War started. I said, watch this, and that's been our life. Basically, as some of you know, I've continued to serve, and why do I want to do this? This is basically a service, it's continued service. It's what it's about, being a veteran or a servant to the government, is that stuff that makes me complete.
Well said.
So it's selfless.
I think our recent Memorial Day service would be a good reason for anybody to want to serve on that committee. It was beautiful, it was reverent, it was a community event, it was terrific. And I know even though you were not officially appointed, you participated in organizing that. I appreciate that. Any further comment or questions from members of the board?
I remember serving with Patty many years ago on one of the first building committees. I forget exactly which one, but.
Compo.
Yeah, it was the community center.
Yep, but thanks for stepping forward then,
Mhm.
and all your service, and stepping forward again. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Patricia Bolton to the Veterans Graves Committee for a one-year term expiring June 30, 2019.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to appoint Patricia Bolton to a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2019 to the Veterans Graves Committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you very much for this very important service.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it again.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your.
I'm sorry. It's ridiculous.
I'm with you.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you later. Take care. Thanks. Huh? Oh, you did see him? Oh, yes. Thank you. I know he's. Thanks. See you later. Hi, Patty.
Thank you, Patty.
I'd stay, but I got more. Sorry.
Don't.
I would if I could.
Yeah, really. We all would.
Such dedication.
I'm sorry, why did you say that out loud, Brian? You can leave. Was that out loud?
Yeah, no one's gonna stop you,
on
Brian.
TV.
No one's gonna
Oh,
tackle you, Brian, if you head out the door. I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting that our EDIC committee has a job fair coming up. The next item is a discussion with member of the EDIC commission, Jen Jarrell. Jen, do you want to join us here and describe
Sure.
what's going on?
Sure.
I know.
Oh, thanks.
I
You're
like
so
this.
sweet. I'm flattered.
Good to see you.
We need the exercise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Hello. Okay, so my name's Jen Giroux, and Kevin was,
Kevin Whalen.
Kevin Whalen was today at the funeral for Rick, and he asked me to step in and talk about what the Economic Development Commission does, which is, in a nutshell, supporting new and old business in Stow, and to try to build Stow economically as best we can with what we offer here in the town. And one thing that we're currently working on right now is we're working with the planning board on sign bylaws to form some sort of continuity on signs in Stow. That's an ongoing task, so I'll keep you posted on that. And the most recent, we have the job fair meet and greet on Thursday from 4 to 7 at Pompo Community Center. And we have, I'm happy to report, 18 vendors that are coming, mostly from Stow, and the ones that are not are in the adjoining areas or service Stow. Are you interested in hearing these?
Yes.
or-
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Get a plug, sure.
All right, Stowbrook Business Services, Annalie Connolly Photography, Eden Good Health, Personal Chefs, Little Feet Treats, Emma's Cafe, Keller Williams, Precision Coating in Hudson, Stow Firearms, Radon, Shaw's, Dunkin' Donuts, Kevin Whalen's business, which is, I don't recall the actual name.
Hardware store.
It's his, he
Okay.
started
It's
a
Lawn
fire
something, fire
fire
alarm.
extinguisher inspection.
Oh.
And it's Kevin's fault for not being here.
He sold the hardware
Represent- Yes, he sold the hardware store. Verizon, Pilot Grove Farm, Home Instead Elder Care. I was contacted by Raytheon because Stow is an engineer-minded community, and they are coming to recruit. So if you know any college kids or someone still in school, Raytheon is interested in talking. Jennifer Connor Estate Planning and Pinnacle Mortgage Corporation will be here as well. So now the goal is to get the community to come and see what these businesses have to offer. So we're expecting, I hope, at least 50, if not more. And there'll be some refreshments if people are food oriented. And it'll be 3 hours, and come and meet what we have.
So it sounds like if I'm living in town and I'm looking for a job,
Mhm.
and this is the kind of place I might go and bring some resumes and
Absolutely.
see what's there. And if I'm a local business already and I'm looking for new B2B contacts, I might go there to talk about what I do and what I need.
That's right. Networking. If you're not hiring, even just come and let the community know that you're here. There's a lot of state businesses that are out of the house, and I think you'd be surprised what we have to offer.
And this is the first time we've done anything.
This
like
is the
that.
first annual. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes and see what the demand is, and try something new.
Questions, from members of the board?
We're hoping to have some of the orchards available. However, it's the off-season and they are vacationing as they should be, so we're hoping to get some representation.
The edict seems to be on a really constructive upswing. I've been a terrible liaison, but from what I can tell, I think focusing on the sign bylaw, maybe even lighting bylaw, exactly what you gotta be doing.
Yes.
You know, planning board ought to be getting the input from people in the community,
Mhm.
especially since we don't have our own chamber of commerce.
Right.
And this is very innovative, and I know it's been a lot of work for you.
Yeah,
So
I
thank
enjoy it though. I'm getting to know a lot of people in town that I didn't know had some things to offer.
So basically, if you're looking for a job or you don't like the job you're in, which is probably like 97% of the town, then maybe this is the place you wanna be.
Absolutely, especially
Bill?
teenagers, everyone.
Don't
Everyone's
tell me you're
welcome.
gonna be going, we don't wanna hear that.
Something about being unhappy in a child, I don't know. Just kidding. Just wanted to say that, as the chief financial officer, because of almost an exclusively undiversified tax base that we have,
Yep,
trending the wrong way, over 90% residential,
yep.
and having in an earlier life served on an EDIC, they can be very instrumental once they've go through the growing period, begin to focus on marketing Stow for some businesses,
Absolutely.
and I'm happy to begin to perhaps feed them a little more with regard to financial assets once they begin to do that. But they can do a great deal to market the community and bring some those businesses that Stow would find acceptable is not the proper word, but they would encourage, that the constituents in Stow would encourage. We're not looking for the large, buildings
Brick
bringing
and
more
mortar,
traffic and all the
right.
rest of it, but
Sure.
consulting works, that kind of commercial space, smaller, and all the rest of it. But something needs to be done longer term in Stow because of the structural impediments on the revenue side. One of them being we need to expand and diversify the tax base because we don't have much else for revenues at this moment. And I don't think the community itself, wanting that quintessential flavor, is going to be seeking the large ones. And to tell you the truth, we don't have the infrastructure for it, so it's going to be the smaller ones, but they're going to be desperately needed because in my 26 years, we had a smaller but stable commercial base, even in small industrial when I got here 26 years ago, and that's not true anymore. Long term, you're going to have to try to reverse that trend, and I think the EDIC would be a great body to help do that. So I hope everybody supports it and begins to get involved and to help through network and otherwise begin to increase at least the professional commercial base, retail, professional, even if we're not going industrial, just for taxes.
What about agricultural? Would that be a priority?
And agricultural, it's a matter of degree, it's a difference of degree than kind because of agricultural with regard to taxes, they typically are abated down from the full market value. They still contribute financially, jobs, other things. So anything would help. Economic development drives community development, in my opinion. And so if you're going to expand opportunities here, you've got to take a look at trying even incrementally to expand economic and tax base and business base. It's vital. And leave aside taxes, it's people with jobs and disposable income and being able to support their families and all the things that economic development drive, and they're critical. Is there anything more important than making a living and taking care of your family and being able to support the other businesses that exam? This is it. Here, I hope it does well in the future.
I plan on being there. Tom?
I was just gonna say, Bill, I think my recollection is that probably 20 years ago, we were 85, 87% residential, something like that. We were having the same conversation. And as you said, it's been going the wrong way. We had conversations back then about trying to preserve commercial areas. Didn't go real well for us. It turned into housing. One place, down by the gas station, that was all zoned industrial at one point, and the town passed on it to try to keep it that way, but it just didn't work out. So it's,
The competing interests and needs that are typically, and we're at the point where there are substantive competing interests and needs. So if you want to preserve the open space, we acquire land so that we can walk in the woods or bike in the woods. That's taxable property. That's beneficial, but at the same time, I think we've got to keep some eye on taxable property and making it productive for all the reasons we just, and I've seen it work, is what I'm saying. At the same time, we tried the investment tax credits. I know when I was young and foolish here, I looked at, we were invited, the town of Boxborough was looking when Cisco was going to come in, driving towards Route 2 north through West Acton, up to Route 2, you see over 1 million square feet of office space there. That was Cisco. That was an investment tax credit that was regional. The state limited the number of regional tax credits. I came back because Boxborough said, Bill, we'd invite you to just put Stow on the list. Not that you're going to do it, but it then would secure our opportunity if somebody came along to offer the investment tax credit. I think I left the room the only one enamored with that offer. So, that kind of big investment is not where people are. And for those that are living in Stow, it's the smaller incubator or other things, but that still doesn't mean more of smaller can't get you the same result. Just gotta
Especially
work.
with technology, we can keep the open lands and work from our computers and still make a pretty big impact on the economy.
And the fact is, we don't have the water and sewer infrastructure to attract the large
We
buildings that use a
could,
lot of.
we could.
We could, but I didn't say that. okay?
We'll
I
see.
tried to sell water when I
We
first got here too,
could.
because we're sitting on a bunch of it and our neighbors needed it, but that wasn't, that's too bad idea.
That's another meeting.
That's too bad idea.
Mr. Burke,
I don't wanna go,
I'm good.
he said to.
Well, I'll be there with at least one of my kids on
Great.
Thursday. And we reached out to Minuteman Airfield.
We have, yep. Everyone, all of the businesses that are recorded in Stow have been sent a letter. The response was not great from the letter, and then we have been pounding the pavement, trying to hit as many as we could. I believe that they were contacted a second time, so
They've got their wings and wheels.
that's the
on
same
Thursday.
night, that's right.
Yes, but there were a bunch of small businesses at Minuteman that I
Right.
thought should be.
Right.
And I appreciate you reaching out again. Thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, and, you know, like you said, you've got enough vendors there, and now it's just a matter of
Getting,
getting the turnout.
getting the community, yeah.
Jen, thank you for getting this
Thank
up
you.
and around. Really appreciate it.
Oh,
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I want to move things around a little bit to take care of people, well, to take care of people who might be here for particular items. I know when Doug is here on, are you folks here for a particular item?
14.
I'll move that up. Let's do Doug's thing first. Chief, what are you here, what are you lurking for?
Who you spying?
Just if there was any concerns on the appointments,
Okay,
the rest of the evening.
all right.
He's protecting his interest.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Can't trust these guys.
Never leave a meeting early if they're on the agenda.
You don't want to walk out with an assignment.
Could be lurking
Let's talk about the
behind.
establishment of the new committee for the restoration of town. Doug, you want to join us? So this is kind of a Doug Hyde, want you assistant building inspector, or what's your official title, deputy building inspector?
Assistant building inspector, assistant facilities manager.
There you go. This is kind of a follow-on to some discussions we've had in the past after the Selectmen established a building reuse committee to look at some of the buildings in the town center and what to do about them. Some recommendations were made. Our recent town meeting voted to appropriate a substantial amount of money for the CPC, from CPC funds, for design of, I'm gonna call it foundational or structural work to the town hall. And now this is the next step in the process of what to do with town hall. And Doug, why don't you describe what it is?
Basically, it's a follow-on to all of the other committees the Board of Selectmen has established when it comes to remodeling of a major facility in town. We need members from 5 of the boards, 6 of the boards to be involved in oversight. We need to review, we need to send out applications for design engineering firms to help guide us in both the feasibility and the appropriate use for that facility. We are asking for a citizen at large. Hopefully that citizen would have an architectural design business background to assist us and in moving forward with the project. There aren't, well, I don't really want to say that we have our minds made up as to what, or I have my mind made up as to what would happen with the facility, but we don't envision significant changes, but the changes that would be coming are significantly expensive. Sprinklers, air conditioning, flooring, concrete floor, drainage, all of those things, but the building itself, we're not anticipating any significant change to it. The input from everybody would help guide what would happen to the other spaces. You know, do the restrooms on the first floor need to be changed? Do we need to do a better job with handicap accessibility? What should be done with the basement space? Was the recreation department, it's a medium-sized conference room size? The heating and air, the heating plant is down there. If you recall, that the heating is, that all needs to be replaced. So it's kind of a nuts and bolts operation, not like the pump syndicate center, but we're convinced that whatever we do with that, if we improve it, primarily if we air condition it and get the dampness out of it, that a number of folks, committees, and citizen groups would want to use that facility also.
So can I just make sure I understand? It sounds like part of the work of the committee is overseeing the expenditure of the $175,000 approved by town meeting, and then going probably the next step toward hiring somebody to actually do the
Correct.
work. And then it sounds like it's going beyond that, I think, to start doing design for the interior, and that will necessarily encompass what the future use of the building will be.
Correct.
Okay. Tom?
At least the way I would envision it is the 175 will be the design
Of the structural.
of everything in there. Yeah. You know, at least that's what I'm envisioning, because
It will be the design of, it will generate the plans necessary for us to go out to bid, so that we know what the construction portion of the project would be.
But if interior, let's say interior walls or fixtures need to be put in once we settle on the use, that's a different project.
That would be phase two. That would,
Phase
that
two.
would be the, if we do the math, based on our original estimates, which are now close to 3 years old, $1.75 million to rebuild that facility.
Structurally.
Structurally.
Yeah, and then,
My interpretation of structure and yours might be different, but not so much structure, it's gonna be more cosmetic, and the interior machines that make the space habitable.
I guess what I'm getting at is, to some extent, when you settle on the use of the building, you may need interior changes,
Correct.
and that will be a separate project, presumably a far more inexpensive project.
I'm not sure I'm following you.
Mr. Wrigley?
I'll give you my approach to this, and Doug and I have talked quite a bit, as Craig, going through from the feasibility study on. In part, this is much the same process we followed for the other building groups. My feeling is this: you've got some pre-design to do, facilities, feasibility study and space use, which would be pre-designed, but it's in part going to address, or I think you could, and it wouldn't be a bad time to do it. For example, my thoughts are about Historical Society Cultural Center. Okay. So the architect can help you through the process, because without some sense of the future use of it, all you've really got now is engineering work to get systems improvement and the rest of it, which I think you can do more of with $175,000, to look at and go through public forums to get a sense from the community of future use. We're not going to radically restructure that building. We're not going to subdivide that main floor space, because that would be crazy. That's culturally and historically, I'm not even certain the state would, because it's a historical structure.
Right.
We're going to be subject to the state standards with regard to use, and anything that gets replaced from windows to systems and all the rest is going to have to meet the state standards. But I think part of it would be, of the RFP, would be some pre-design, feasibility study, space use would be two I recommend. Then you get into schematics with regard to systems improvement and replacement, structural to the degree it's there. Pre-design, I'll use the word conceptual because some people understand that better. You go to a couple public forums, you've had the feasibility study, you've had all of that. That committee has some from the previous ones. We'll have the discussion with the public. What would you like to see? You've got representation of the committee from the Historic Commission, they have thoughts, I think along the lines of like a historical society and cultural, which this town, in my opinion, with all the interest that people have and the problems we're having finding places to store and the differences of opinion between certain groups, agencies, and buildings that I won't get into, this begins to could solve that problem, and it would be a multiple use. But I would do that pre-design, and you could still go into design development and get construction cost estimates in the spring, let's say it goes along well, to ask for the money, based on that prospective use. Some of that's not going to be systems design, and other things won't be affected
Okay,
much.
Mr. Burke.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chair.
Well, that helped me, I understand, I know what you mean by pre-design or conceptual, and you think that's part of the 175.
I would say I would shoot for that.
Okay. There will be a chance for public input about the use of that building. I know a lot of people want to have a voice in that.
And that's primarily what we're interested in, you know, and the Scottish dancers and everyone else would kill us if we tried to modify the main floor.
Right.
But there's a lot of ancillary spaces that are not being used well, and maybe they could take on a new use in a new shape of room.
Mr. Burke.
I take it then from what our town administrator said, and it was very helpful, that he will, as in similar committees in the past, be providing a learned and helpful hand guiding the work of this committee.
Undoubtedly.
And then,
Should I volunteer before or after I've been? I volunteer to help.
well, I'm glad we got that. That's one checklist done. Now, could you just run through the 5 other boards that are going to be sending members?
It has been recommended that we have a member from the Board of Selectmen, a member from the Finance Committee, a member from Capital Planning, a member from the CPC, a member from the Building Department, and a member from the Historic Commission. And then 1 citizen at large, again, hopefully with an architectural design business background.
Just administratively. I saw a notice for posting in there, that would be for the general member. How does that interface with each of the committees? Does the committee select someone who then has to submit a letter?
We typically have them just offer up a candidate. It's not a posting. In other words, you post generally what the committee would be comprised of in-house, so you've done that, identifies and defines the membership. The board will decide on one of its members, that will be, and each one of the other committees will do the same thing.
It's pretty
They
much
choose.
what happened with, when I'm appointed to capital planning or Brian's appointed to LACAG. They don't get a vote on it, that's the selectmen's representative. The only exception I know to that recently was at our last meeting, the planning board asked for a recommendation of a selectman to a subcommittee. And, you know,
Well, I think each committee should be left to their own devices, how they want to go about assigning one of them. All I'm saying is, it's not something where someone has to submit a letter of interest or the rest of it. The committee will identify someone, and we did that with all the other building committees.
Okay.
They decide who on their group that either wants to or gets volunteered.
Except for the at-large member.
Yes, and so that posting covers all of that. And what the posting should have are dates in there with regard to the opening. And then again, for anybody that knows anybody, I mean, we've got engineers in town, we've got folks who work for architectural firms and other things. It'll be a critical piece to have that skill set. I think it'd be helpful, very helpful.
I actually don't see any dates in the posting, it just says we'll accept it. It really should say, we'll accept letters of application until the positions are filled. Should probably say for 30 days to apply. There's only one position to be filled.
I would say this, if you leave it open, and given the difficulty we have finding people to volunteer for things or even become aware of it, and maybe somebody even put something in the paper as opposed to just posting. If it's open-ended for that position, my feeling would be this, is to get the committee started doing its work. Hope to fill that last one as soon as you can, but I wouldn't hold the entire process up because there's no guarantee that with all deliberate speed that gets filled, and what I think you probably want to get marching off and then fill it as soon as you can. That'd be my thought.
Now that I'm looking at this more closely, I understand why Mr. Hawks asked the question he asked. You're really only looking for one member, the at-large member, to send in a resume and have the selectmen appoint.
I came to the board with the idea that you would review this and say, gee, you know, because if you look at, there are a number of you who wear two hats. And if the boards were, if both owners of the hats that you are wearing said, why don't you go and represent both of us, then that would open up for more representation from the general public. But that may or may not work, but I wanted to present you with all possible ideas.
If you want more representation from the general public, which wouldn't be a bad idea, you should expand the committee. And more at large, well,
Could I weigh in again?
Yeah.
I will say this, those who represent our boards here are the public, they're volunteers. I think, to me, when it comes time to get vote for money, the same reason I felt strongly about having finance committee, capital planning committee, in this case CPC, most importantly, because we'll be asking for their money, that they should be represented, but all those folks serving on those boards are the public. It's not like your staff, which I could understand, and you get the group too large and it becomes difficult to manage and make decisions and deliverables, and we've all been on committees where that happens. And I think this matter's gone far enough down the road that people aren't gonna be,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? If you have if you have the proper forums and get done with it.
Mr. Burke, well, Tom,
I was just gonna say, one of the things I know that when we were doing the fire station, the original committee, there were a couple folks that came in, general public, on a regular basis. Eventually, we said, look, we'll share everything with you dudes, you know, and we'll make you associate members. You know, you guys are showing enough interest, and we can move forward with that, but we just don't need any more voting members. We'll stick with the, you know, 7's already starting to push the limits. So I think that we're, you know, I agree with Bill. You know, we'll be having open meetings. People will be able to come in and we'll be soliciting input.
I just want to be clear, the Community Preservation Committee will pick the member that's going to serve. The Historic Commission will pick the member that's going to serve. Okay.
That's the intent. It may not read, I haven't looked at the
Okay.
reading, but that was what I was intending when I brought it up.
Okay. Brian?
The point I was gonna make was addressed by Mr. Ryan with more experiential knowledge than I ever could. I would then ask the chair if it is his preference at this point to consider the selectman's appointment.
It's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
I move to designate.
Is it?
Yeah, appointment of representative from Selectmen is
Yeah.
certain.
Okay.
Does anybody, is there a volunteer?
I know that there are two members on this board that have a wealth of experience in these kinds of committees. I would defer to them. I would defer to any of my colleagues, quite frankly. But I would be willing to serve, and subject to nobody else wanting to, because I anticipate they'd probably be meeting during the day, and I have some time during the day over the next year or so.
That is gonna be one of the, I was gonna volunteer for it, however, it ended up having to be evening meetings. You know, I could make an
Well,
occasional day meeting.
Isn't it likely to be anyway, since you're involving these?
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
I think it has to
Presupposes
be.
that there'll be evening meetings.
Yeah.
If someone with more experience wants to volunteer, go ahead.
That's, Mr. Chairman, that certainly would not be yours truly, but for discussion purposes, I would like to nominate Mr. Ryan to serve in that capacity.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Tom Ryan as the Selectmen's representative to the Town Hall Restoration Committee. Further discussion?
I just believe his, with no disrespect to the chair, his experience and all of the work that's gone on with Pompo and the fire station and everything else, he's certainly my choice.
I'm good with it.
So am I.
Ingeborg?
I didn't know he wanted to do it all over again.
I'm fine with it too. I guess I'm just confused. Don't we have to vote on forming the committee before we appoint
Before we
someone to
get
the
appointed.
committee?
Well,
It's all in one, if you look at the motion, it seems like it's all
establishment of new committee
Well,
for
the motion
restoration.
doesn't designate.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
So,
Yeah,
And I
think-
also have a comment on the posting. We'll get back to that.
yeah, the posting is, so the posting needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Probably.
But I'm assuming we can vote to establish the committee even though the exact wording of the posting is not.
Correct.
Then I'd like to ask Mr. Hawks to withdraw his motion to appoint Mr. Ryan
Momentarily,
momentarily,
yes.
and Mr. Burke to withdraw his second momentarily.
He nodded the right way.
sure,
nodded.
okay.
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 No, I'm not going to.
And now let's deal, as Ms. Ms. Hageman indicates, appropriately with the actual establishment of the committee. And this will be the time for any lingering concerns about the posting to come up. So do I have any discussion or a motion about establishment of the committee or the posting?
Chairman, just to get the discussion off the ground, on the recommendation of the building department, I move to establish a town hall restoration committee composed of 7 members with 6 chosen from the town of Stow boards and 1 at-large resident member to serve 3-year terms per the requirements stated in the committee description. Further, I move to designate members of the Town Hall Renovation Committee as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law 268A. Members must be registered voters of Stow and agree to comply with state ethics and open meeting law requirements.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to establish the Town Hall Restoration Committee as specified and to designate its members as special municipal employees. Further discussion, and now would be the time for Ms. Hageman's comment about the posting.
Based on the conversations that we've had so far, it sounds like one of the key responsibilities of this group will also be to prepare a request for proposals. And as part of that, you have to define your scope of work. And so I think a lot of the discussions that we've had today as to what this $175,000 is comprised of will in fact be determined by the committee as they prepare their scope of work.
Yes, but it's hoped that we would have we would have the chosen design architectural firm along with us to attend the public hearings, to be part of the team from the get-go to.
But how would you first you have to do an RFP.
Right.
Unless you're just gonna do an RFQ just for the quals. And then you, with them, define the scope of work.
This is a Chapter 7 project, public building, where you do go for statement of qualifications. You will clearly have to outline deliverables.
Right. And so
And
that
so
there's,
it would be, from my perspective, keeping it simple, pre-design, for example, some feasibility and space use, conceptual, you can lump those together, they'll understand from firms that do this. And then you go into preliminary design, schematics,
all right, so
design
my
development.
point is that we can't be micromanaging what this committee is doing at this time. So my point is only that this committee it should be clear that the scope of services is still somewhat undefined. And that, we can talk about what's required and what we anticipate will happen, but ultimately the committee will be doing that.
That was my assumption, which
Right.
is generally the case with all our building committees.
So
We'll
I
get
just
to
think
work
it
as a working group,
should be
committee, and we'll put together the RFQ.
Correct, right. So it's a QRP, but I just think that as you said, Mr. Chair, the posting will have to be tweaked a little bit, and I think that's a big ticket item for a committee to do, is to prepare this RFP. Fortunately, you have Bill that can help you, and you've gone through it before. But I just don't wanna, I think the Board of Selectmen should understand that, us talking about all the details of what's gonna happen really is them. And to the extent that the board wants to know before the RFP or RFQ is issued, we should state that now. I don't know that we need to be that involved, but I just wanted to, you guys were just sort of getting into a lot of details and weeds about it, and I'm thinking, in part, that's for the committee to work on.
But at the same time, in order to establish, I get what you're saying, you're right, building committees like this,
I mean, there's a lot of undefined factors here.
but in order to establish the committee, we need to have some idea of what it's going to do.
Well, exactly, and that idea was not in here.
Right.
The issue of writing the RFP or RFQ is not in the posting.
And what I was actually trying to get at, and I thought I got an answer, and I take your point to mean, there may be a current intent that could easily change when the actual scope of the RFR is drafted. What I was mainly trying to get at was, is this the committee to renovate Town Hall, or is this just the first committee to do the first part of the renovation, and then there's gonna be a second committee?
That's correct, and that we've already gone through, so
Right,
we
and
don't
the
have to
answer
go
I
through
got
that
was
again.
that this is the
Right. No, this is a separate discussion in my opinion.
And maybe I can help there. I think you could bunch conceptual design phase, which is pre-design, we all realize that. Within that would be, from my perspective, some feasibility and space use based on public forum. This group would come back to the Board of Selectmen at the completion of the conceptual design phase, subject to going to public forums, hearing from feedback, and then come to the chief elected official and say, look, here's what we got for conceptuals, okay? And included will be a couple of basic options on future use for space. And then, before they go into design development, there'll be decisions made by this board to support that approach or not. So nothing is gonna go through substantively, in my opinion, or should.
No, I understand, that I understand. I think perhaps we're overblowing my point. My point is simply that this committee will be preparing an RFPQ for the conceptual phase of the project.
Right.
And that is a heavy lift for the committee. I think it's not easy, given all the unknowns and the variables with this building for the conceptual phase. So, yeah, I just thought we should make that point in that, in there.
Yeah, I don't see it as a heavy lift as like Pompo and such. I mean, I think the building's smaller, the thoughts in mind about future use, there's ideas floated out there already. The Historic Commission has a better grasp even than I do about that approach, along with maybe cultural other things. It's a historic building, so there's a limit to what you can do with that building. The system improvements are gonna take place regardless of what you do with the building. So, let's say there was no agreement in the end of the concept. You go forward and do the systems design and all the other improvements through your design development, you carve that piece out. If there's not either an acceptance of future use or it gets complicated, you carve it out and you do the basics. Then you come back and say, okay, some finish work, you know, which would be minor. But I myself don't see that becoming.
Yeah, this is taking on a whole new life other than what I was thinking and preparing to go with. I'm a little concerned by the word you're using, conceptual,
Well, that's why I was using his word.
because I see this as a little bit more than conceptual. We have to know what the condition of the building is, so we have to actually do some demolition, destruction, testing, looking in this design phase, along with what we use it for, but we also have to know what we have to repair, rebuild, remodel.
But I think Bill's point on conceptual was that it's on the use part is gonna be conceptual.
Yes.
Right.
I don't see this as, to tell you the truth, this
Right.
is no different than any other project,
Yes.
building project
All the
process
same.
we've done.
But you're still writing an RFP, right?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
my point is, just put that in.
We-
Yeah.
Okay.
Our-
Yeah, and that's been the
Taken a life
responsibility
of
of
its
all of our
own.
other building committees.
Right.
Yeah.
They've
But it's
done,
just
they
not in
started
the
with the
thing.
RFQ or RFP, and they've gone through. And I don't see myself that this is
Yeah,
different.
This isn't our first rodeo. I think everybody's made their points. I think we're
Right.
ready for a vote.
I think we're ready for, I agree, I think we're ready for a vote. There has been a motion on the table. Doug, is there something?
I think there's something that I'd like to throw in, not structurally. We've
So
decided.
I got two conversations going on at the same time. Can I just have one?
I'm sorry, sir.
No, that's all right. Tom.
We've decided to form it with 6 chosen from town boards. I think we probably should select the town boards now so that it's clear. This
Was
is
it
possibly the 6th.
Yeah, wasn't it offered in the
It's
first?
stated
It's in
in
the
the
state,
committee
it's in the
description.
thing.
Stayed in the committee, and
We have the 6 identified.
It's, all right, it's not in the
Reference.
It's not referenced at all in here, other than six.
Yeah, I don't have-
Six
Yeah, but
votes.
it's in the notice of vacancy, and I made Doug go over them.
This,
Okay.
this, yes, it's
All
been
right.
stated at the.
I think we're fine on that.
All right, I just wanted to make sure it was clear, because
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you want to ask him something?
No, Mr. Hawks made in his initial motion that the members of the committee would be registered voters of the town of Stow. And that presents a little bit of a problem because the building department representative, I don't believe Mr. Martin has the enthusiasm, I think he's enough to do, and
Doug's from Hudson is what he's trying to say.
I no longer live in this community.
But that would only be for the at-large resident, if I heard Mr. Hawks correctly.
You could make it that way.
You
Nope.
could-
That's how the motion reads. So, we need the motion to be amended. And, Mr. Hawks, would you accept a friendly amendment? That the second paragraph of your motion is, further, I move to designate members of the Town Hall Renovation Committee as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268, all of whom, period.
Well, no, you can't take out to comply with the ethics.
It doesn't need to be in the motion, they have to do that by law anyway.
Sometimes they're complicated.
Yes.
I agree with the chair's point.
Accept that as an amendment.
And the second.
I second it.
Accept that, okay. So motions are made and seconded to appoint a 7-member committee to oversee the town hall restoration and to appoint them and to designate them as special municipal employees. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready for a vote? Appear to be ready for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? And that passes unanimously. So we understand you're gonna tweak the job description a bit, but the list of committee representatives isn't gonna change. The 6 isn't gonna change.
May I go back to my?
Yes, you may. That's what I'm gonna ask you to do.
Withdrawn. Mr. Chairman, I move that Mr. Ryan be designated as the representative of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to designate Tom Ryan as the selectman's representative to the town hall restoration committee. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I'll abstain.
How noble of you.
And I'm gonna take it that that motion was for 1 year,
Yes.
a 1-year appointment ending July 30th, 2019. June 30th, 2019.
No,
No?
I hope not.
the three-year
3 years.
appointments was
It's a 3-year.
For the 3-year appointment ending June 30th, 2021.
Thank you.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
That's an amendment?
No even time.
Or that's clarification of the.
That's a clarification of what I meant to say.
Clarification of what he meant to say.
Well, it's a 3-year board, so
Yep.
our appointment
The
would
way
be
we
3
just
years.
voted to establish it
just
was a
voted.
3-year board.
So,
He's on forever.
fine.
Well, one of the things I've just got to say it right now, is it happens, this is kind of justice, because it was 20 years ago this year that this guy got me into the finance committee.
Okay.
And finally brought me here. So now I'm sitting on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
All right, we
Thank
appreciate,
you.
we appreciate the history. Thank you. I have some people waiting, so thank you. Is there anything else?
No,
No.
Goodbye.
I'm just trying to get things along. Glad you got the hint finally.
Doug, I'm gonna let you stay. I'm gonna let you stay.
I don't know how they do it in Hudson, but you know what I'm
That's how we
saying?
do it here.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you, Doug, sincerely.
On this subject.
Can you take
Can we
any
do that
discussion
out-
outside?
Can we do that
please,
outside?
down the
We're
hall?
trying to have a meeting here. All right, we have some people here on item 14. Items 13 and 14 go together. I'm gonna take that up next. And then one of the people here on 14 just left, but I'm sure he'll figure it out. So at the last meeting, we discussed how Tom and I were gonna have a meeting with Bill and Jesse about the mechanics of the recreational marijuana votes coming up this fall. We all know the planning board is planning on a zoning bylaw amendment to plan for recreational marijuana. There has been discussion on the Board of Selectmen about giving the voters an opportunity to vote the prohibitions that state law allows them to vote, not necessarily in favor or against, at least not at this point, but to give voters the opportunity. What we discussed at that meeting were the mechanics of how to do that. It's more complicated than I thought initially. The prohibitions, number one, there's sort of a menu of prohibitions. A town can prohibit all retail sales. It can prohibit manufacturing. It can prohibit cultivation. It can prohibit testing. So the initial thought was, well, give people a menu. Each of those prohibitions to be effective would have to be voted first by town meeting and then at the ballot. That's all complicated by the fact that at town meeting, which is presumably first, we have a zoning bylaw. How do you make sure your zoning bylaw remains effective no matter what possible prohibitions may pass? Jesse's working on that with town council. And the Board of Selectmen will be able to see the proposed warrant language and ballot questions. We're talking about August 14th, which would allow me an opportunity to be there after my extended vacation. It might be earlier if you have to, and I certainly wouldn't mind. But that's all about mechanics. How do you do it? And there's a lot to talk about there. As we were discussing this, we all realized the Board of Selectmen has not had a substantive discussion about whether it wants to do this. Not exact language, we're not ready for that. That'll presumably be August 14th or earlier. But do the selectmen as a body want to proceed down the road of giving the voters the opportunity to vote any prohibitions allowed by law? And I'm gonna ask Tom, since he was there, to maybe kick off that, and then I just wanna hear from my colleagues, and we'll find time for some public comment.
As Jim mentioned, I think there were a couple of things that we can do at town meeting only. One is a zoning bylaw, which I think that's not even us, that's, the planning board. The one that we can do, the second one that I think we should consider is, assuming that there is marijuana commerce in town, we can, at town meeting, put a warrant article on to charge a 3% sales tax to mitigate any costs or to try to bring in a few extra dollars. So that's the one thing that we can do at town meeting that I see right now. Anything else as far as proposing any prohibitions, and as Jim mentioned, there are actually a number of definitions that are going to be in the the zoning bylaw that are referenced in Mass General Law, which are retail, manufacture, testing, and a couple of other things. There's a survey that Jesse actually just put out, and I think there's only gonna be 7 things on there, on the survey, whether, that I think are legal definitions, shall we say. So what we could potentially do is, for any one or more of those, we could allow the voters to make a decision. And it would have to be a 2-step process. It would have to go before town meeting first, get an affirmative yes to prohibit one or more of the line items. And then it would also have to go to the ballot and be affirmed at the ballot. Both of those, to my knowledge, have to pass. One of the things that we're not going to be discussing at this point is, I'll say, on-premises consumption. Because in order to do that, right now, the Cannabis Control Commission has put that off, and it would have to be by an affirmative vote of someone or others to allow on-site consumption at some point in the future. I don't think the Cannabis Control Commission has even fully figured out all their ins and outs on that one. They've tabled it to my knowledge for now. But I don't think we have to even consider that at this point, because it would have to be affirmative, and I suppose I'm not ready to bring it forward at this point where it's still in the beginnings of this whole type of thing. One other thing that we could do, but I don't think we need to take action on it, would be to reduce the number of retail licenses below 20% of the liquor licenses. Effectively, right now, we're limited to one retail license, assuming we do nothing. So,
Reducing it is the same as a ban.
reducing it is the same as a ban, so I would say, let's make it just make it very clear and not obtuse, and say, do you want to have retail or not, yes or no?
Let me stop you and just ask the rest of the selectmen, does everybody feel like they know what's going on? Perfectly understandable if you don't.
I have one question.
Yes.
If we propose these menu prohibitions, is that the Board of Selectmen sponsoring these as articles to town meeting? How do they get proposed?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Well, I think to be more precise, yes, it would appear on the warrant, and in parentheses, it would say Board of Selectmen. Really, what we're doing would be placing them on the warrant, and then there would be another vote, presumably shortly before town meeting, about whether to make a recommendation on it.
Right, okay, so,
But it would say Board of Selectmen because,
because we'd be the ones promoting,
Initiating.
forwarding this to,
Right.
Mhm.
okay.
right.
So, I appreciate the history that you both have given. Has there, the zoning that's being proposed, you know, we've seen drafts of it, and this, I have taken the survey, it's out there, and I think they go through each one of these potential
Mhm.
prohibitions and
Right.
what are our opinions on them. So it's another process question, and I'm just, sorry. In order for us to meet the scheduling that you're outlining, what would happen if we waited for the results of that survey? I guess what I'm getting at is why do we feel there's a need for this? And I know that's the question that you're asking, has the board discussed this to find the need? So is there a need for this that we've heard? If we make some decision, are you expecting a decision today?
I'm expecting some direction from the board, because certainly if a majority of the board does not want to isn't interested in putting prohibitions on the ballot, then I need to tell Bill and Jesse to stop working on this question.
Oh, I see.
Um,
But if we did that today, for example, would we be eliminating the results of the survey? Don't you think we should hear what the public is saying with respect to the survey before we would take any action?
So I'd like to hear from I will give you a quick personal answer. I don't need that. Because my opinion, I want to just give people the opportunity to vote it, regardless of what the survey says. The survey, which could be, let's say, 120 people, could come out 90% in favor of recreational marijuana. I'd still want it on the ballot, just so no one can ever say I was deprived of the opportunity for a vote. That's all. But that's just me, I want to hear what my other colleagues have to say.
I'm going to throw a wrench in this. The biggest problem from the procedures that the chair and my colleague, Mr. Ryan, have so helpfully laid out is that it sounds like the planning board is going to spend the entire summer trying to propose zoning bylaws when they don't actually know what the town's preference is going to be at town meeting and at town election. Their work is going to necessarily have to be contingent. It'll be kind of like a flow chart. If the town allows
Yeah.
A and B, and having raised that problem, as I would like to think we would all do, I'm going to offer a solution. Maybe we should spend this summer just focusing on preparing for a town meeting and town election on the various options A, B, C, and D, and take advantage of the Attorney General's pronouncement earlier this week that she would allow licenses to be delayed an entire year. And then once the town voices an opinion, and I have to say, I am of the same mind as the chair on this and giving the town a voice, then the planning board doesn't have to start spinning its wheels trying to figure out what the town is going to do. They'll know what the town has done, and those zoning bylaws could be presented at our regular town meeting.
So, that's a good point, because we spent a lot of time on Friday wrestling with the fact that the planning board felt that it had to go forward with the zoning bylaw because the moratorium was expiring 20 days after the town election. So clearly they, if the town didn't prohibit anything, clearly needed a bylaw. This week, since Friday, there has been a newspaper report that the AG would approve moratoria, going into, I think it was late 2019. So that is another possible way to go.
And we would have to pass and propose and pass another moratorium.
But I think, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're still saying, though, that we then focus at town meeting and the election on the prohibitions, giving people the chance to vote the prohibitions.
Yeah, one from column A, one from column B, one from
The
column C.
election this fall?
Yes, this fall, Tom.
And I'm
But-
still, that's a good point, and I think we gotta talk to Jesse about that. I'd still like to focus on the question of, is that where the board wants to go, the board as a whole? Is that just the board?
I apologize if I went off topic.
No, you didn't at all. I have the same thought, that might solve that timing question, but I still wanna get at the policy question. Is that where we wanna move for this fall's election? I'm hearing yes on the whole.
May
I haven't-
just ask a question that would impact their answer?
I wanna give everybody a chance. I honestly don't know where all my colleagues stand on this. I wanna get some initial reaction. I promise I will have some public input.
I'm committed to putting it before the voters, same position as you, one way or another.
Don?
Yes, ditto.
I think I've already said that I agree. I just want to point out also, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, Mr. Hawks. I thought you had finished.
I just, on the, Mr. Burke's point, I don't think we can predict, determine our action saying, okay, we bought more time on this, because what happens if we put all the eggs in that basket and then town meeting says, no, we don't want to extend the moratorium? I don't think we can assume that.
True. So, having gotten the initial reaction that I wanted to get, I wanna get some public input.
If I could just.
I don't
wanna
have
make
input
one
yet,
more-
I just have a question.
Well, let this.
I ceded my time back to Mr. Hawks, because I thought he'd finished, and then it was clear he hadn't finished. I just want to add one last point, which is, we spent $6,000 extra to give us a vote at this November special town election. I don't know if we can get that back at this point.
Don't have to spend it if you don't have an election.
I want the people who showed up to have a chance to speak. Ma'am?
Can I just ask, has anybody got access to any information on what's in it for us? There's obviously the feelings of people about having drugs in their town. But is there $1 million in tax income? Is there $10,000 in tax income? What's the trade-off?
What type of businesses are that?
Well,
What's the potential money, I guess is what I'm asking. Does anybody have any idea?
Less than other states, correct, Mr. Burke? Because the tax that was, although the Cannabis Control Commission has corrected that to some extent.
It's impossible to say, and I don't think I have any special knowledge on this, but it would be impossible to say because it would depend on who wanted to grow marijuana here, who wanted to process marijuana here, who wanted to sell marijuana here. How many licenses would there be? Would there be any?
I mean, it means more money. It means, especially if town meeting went for the 3% sales tax, we don't have a local sales tax on anything else.
Could I
It
just
does
say,
mean more money.
I think as a percentage on my revenues, it's gonna be insignificant, whatever it is.
Right.
Put in,
I'm not-
put in a
I'm not
range,
planning
put a
on
range
balance-
it, if you had to guess.
It'll be less than 1% of my total revenues. I wouldn't even budget for increased revenues next year on the
Based on
sales. No matter what it is, I can't imagine that it would approach, $500,000 in taxes.
Let me, sir, do you have something to say?
Yes. My name is Matt I plan on saying this again tomorrow night at the planning board. My name is Matt Sonicson, a lifelong resident from Packard Road. I have 3 points I'd like to make regarding this issue. Point 1, the people have waited long enough. In the initiative voters passed, regardless of what the state AG just said, in the initiative voters passed in November 2016, the deadline was set at January 1st, 2018 for implementation to be completed. The legislators pushed it back by over 6 months, and Stow has already enacted a moratorium until January 1 of 2019. Further delays will only be used by the opposition to disenfranchise the citizens who voted for the binding ballot initiative and the 111,000 people who signed the petition to get it on into the election. The 3% excise tax we could be making on sales applies not just to retail, but also business-to-business sales. The town desperately needs more tax revenue rather than the overwhelming majority coming from homeowner property taxes, as we heard earlier at this meeting. We seem to vote at town meeting for everything that costs money, but we now have a chance to vote for something that could make the town some money. In the changes the legislature made, they unfortunately reduced the amount of town individual cities and towns can make. They reduced it from 5% to 3%. They allow cities and towns to impose a 3% excise tax on all sales of cannabis products. The 3% tax will not solve all of Stow's financial needs, but it is a start. Point 3, the state has already written extensive regulations and the town of Stow need not reinvent the wheel. Stow is already quite restrictive as far as commercial zoning and signage go. We are already engaged in litigation over our zoning, and we should be very careful before making any new regulations so as to avoid further time and expense in litigation. Finally, to wrap up, I'd like to say that to preserve open space, which is important to so many of us, this town should be encouraging small agricultural startups, and opportunities such as this don't come along very often. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am getting a sense of the board.
Just, Jim, I
Yes.
didn't give you my sense, I was just asking questions.
Okay, would you like to?
Well, I think if we're talking about one retail facility, I don't see the need for this whole menu of prohibitions. Maybe I'm not educated completely, but to me, I think I think we're overanalyzing this, but I could be wrong,
I think it's one retail establishment, but actually, and I don't know at this point, how many, there are a number of other definitions, the manufacturing.
Right.
And
the testing.
And the testing,
Right.
and the craft cultivator place.
The
and
growing, correct.
Growing
But
collaborative.
doesn't our zoning, is not going to be addressing that?
But you could have 5 of this one and 5 of that one, but only one retail establishment. I think the
But that will
20
go through a public zoning process, if our zoning passes and all that.
But zoning can't ban it.
No,
So if there's any,
but our town voted to support this initiative.
is it not possible though, that one or more prohibitions would pass? Are you saying it's impossible?
No, I'm not saying,
Well,
but I just don't
if
think it's
it's-
necessary.
but
That's
if it's
the sense,
possible.
my sense.
Here's the simple perspective that I'm coming at it from. if it's metaphysically possible that the voters would vote in favor of a ban, don't we have to give them that opportunity? Don't we owe it to them?
Mr. Chair, just one point on Ms. Hegeman-Clark, my colleague Ms. Hegeman-Clark, as usual, very excellently voiced point, and I don't mean to quibble, but the voters of this town supported statewide marijuana. First of all, they supported it for growth at small amounts in everyone's town, and that's already going on, or it could be going on. In everybody's backyard, you're allowed to grow, I forget how many plants.
6, I believe.
Or whatever, so that's already going on.
5, 6.
6 per individual, 12 per household if there are more than one individual.
I thought you'd know, thank you. But
That was a leading question.
so we've already got that in place. But as I said, the town didn't vote to allow marijuana sales here. They said everywhere else, including perhaps Stow. But it wasn't, it was a statewide referendum.
So I have
It
a question
wasn't
on that.
directed to sale here in Stow. The other point on that is, I think there were other towns that are already well on the way to licensing these procedures that are in this vicinity. Acton, if I'm not mistaken. But that's just my point, I'm sorry, thank you.
No, that was thank you, that was very helpful. But I had a question, of course now it's gone out of my head.
Because I talked too long, I apologize.
Yeah, you did, you should have just gotten to
It's
the
a
point where I would have been able
It's
to
a strategy
ask
of
my
his,
question.
so that's the
Oh,
important.
God, what was it?
Oh,
There was
it's
something you
action.
said. Oh, this is my question. I don't know the answer. If a town has voted to ban it originally, let's say we voted no as a town.
That wasn't a ban,
That was,
But
what
if we
was
were
it?
a majority no on the referendum.
If we were a majority no in the
Yes.
referendum, that means we could ban it in our town, is that
Yes.
It's easier
By
to
town
ban.
without going
meeting
to
vote
election.
only.
by town meeting vote only? And
Yes.
since we were a town that voted yes,
You have to go to the ballot.
Oh,
we have to go to the,
both,
okay,
town meeting and the ballot.
to ban.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, I see your point.
I live in fear. I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm
No,
just.
I know, I'm just that, I'm.
I live in fear of the day 2 years from now, when the one retail establishment is selling pot-infused gummy bears. And somebody comes up to me and says, I didn't know there was gonna be, why didn't you give us a chance to say no to that? And I wouldn't have a good answer. That's all.
I was just gonna say, part of it is when I started looking into this and thinking about it back in January, February, it's when I started hearing that, you know, there was the potential to have on-premises consumption, you know, like having a pot bar. And I'd never heard about that before I voted for, you know, any of the legalization. Might have changed my mind one way or the other if I'd known about that, but that started bothering me. When I found out that that one thing bothered me, I started thinking that I owed it as a selectman. I'm agnostic on the rest of the uses in town. I'm actually very agnostic. However, I put on my selectman's hat and I said to myself, I feel like I deserve, or the voters deserve a chance. Because, you know what, if I questioned one of the things, somebody else is going to, and we ought to let them have a choice. So, you know, that was my thought process.
Yeah, I just expand a little bit, because all I did was throw in a ditto. I strongly espouse that position, that it's a very different thing to go to a presidential election and say, oh, by the way, are you in favor of legalized pot in Massachusetts? Then the rubber hitting the road, and picking up on what Jim talked about having local establishments that people might say, there may be a substantial groundswell, it may not be, it's not, I'm not trying to predict what it is, that might say, if I'd known that, I would have voted no. I think we should give them a chance, depending on which menu of things we go through town meeting and come up with, to give the voters the chance. We talk about our local pure democracy. This is this is where stuff is gonna be sold and consumed, not in the state. It's in cities and towns. Concord voted last week, overwhelmingly defeated, voted to ban sales.
To ban sales.
Yes. There are others that are, I think, in the works. Littleton has gone the other way. They are either
Yes.
they have licensed or in the process of doing so. That's fine. Leave it up to, it's like the grand speeches you hear on the Senate floor. This should be a matter for the states to decide. Well, in this state, I think the voters of this town should be able to decide. And it will be a well-attended election. Because we're talking about having it on the
November 6th.
on the November 6th election. So it's not like a typical town election where you might get 13% of the people coming out to vote.
Okay.
So for all of those reasons, I really
So I
want to
have
see
the
it.
direction that I needed. We're all gonna visit this again later in the summer, when we see the actual warrant language and ballot questions. Hopefully that'll be August 14th, so I can participate, but it may have to be earlier than that, and that's fine. What I am hearing right now is don't tell Jesse and town council and Bill to stop working on this.
All right.
Okay. Can you make it real quick? Because I think we're just about done.
Can you do better than November? Because I'd just like to point out from a first mover advantage, that if you put it off another 6 months, the other towns Brian mentions are gonna be up and running. There's not gonna be any money to be made.
Well, we're already pushed off till past January 1 already.
I think we're very interested in having as much turnout as possible, and the November election seems to be the best way to do that. There's also just it's physically difficult at this point to get a town meeting.
In the middle
I
of
mean,
summer.
much earlier than October 1, we were talking about it. It's not easy. So if you want the election after that, the November 6th just kind of makes sense.
And as the point was made, we already have the moratorium until the end of this year anyway. Even if we had an earlier vote, wouldn't allow any licenses prior.
I think one of the other things too is that people need to understand that this isn't, you need 2 yeses.
Right,
This is, in order to prohibit it, you need say no at town meeting and a no at the ballot.
Right.
So the thing is, if either one of those fails for any one of the, I'll call it menu items that we put on, it doesn't pass. That's all. And so, people have to show up, if people want to prohibit it, they have to show up at town meeting and they have to show up at the polls. They have to do both. It's a higher hurdle, which I'm okay with,
So we have a few other things to do. I will give Mr. Burke the last word.
Oh, geez.
So we should be out of here around 10. Kidding.
I was just going to say that, I go back to my earlier point with maybe we can extend not the vote on whether to allow it, but the bylaws, just so that Jesse and planning board aren't working and spinning their wheels all summer. I take Mr. Hawk's point about what happens if they don't, if the town doesn't agree to another moratorium, but maybe you guys can noodle that about on your working group and see if there's something that can be developed or designed so that we're not having the planning board make a host of contingent bylaws.
I think one big question, one big unknown right now is, can you have the contingencies in the zoning bylaw and not have to worry about its validity? Jesse seemed confident that you can, but he's still working with town council on that.
There's a way to avoid it if we could assure ourselves that the moratorium would pass, but.
But Don's
or maybe
right,
it's
I mean, it could fail and then
Well, then we
we
might
got no
have,
bylaw.
we could just have some temporary bylaws in place. I don't know, I'm saying maybe you should go back and look at that. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident, though, that the town would see the wisdom of it.
I am too, but I don't like, I don't get it. All right, thank you very
Think
much,
about it.
everyone, for that discussion. That was very good. Thank you very much.
Is there a proposed agenda yet from tomorrow night?
If there is, I don't have it. The planning board would have
The
it.
planning
If
board
they
is.
post it on the board, they have to, but also outside the front door of the building,
The public hearing, as a little piece of this
it'll be posted.
Is it
Ready?
discussion,
Public
I don't,
information.
a public
It's not
information,
here.
but I'm planning on going to the It's a public forum.
But then it needs to be
Public forum
posted.
tomorrow
It's a
night.
public
Yeah.
forum.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. She wanted information.
Would
It's
it
on the
be,
board out there.
does the board believe it would be okay for us to say that the current consensus is that we will allow, that we're planning on allowing the voters to decide?
Decide something, yet to be determined what.
Yet to be determined, but that
I think it,
the current plan is.
I think I would say that, and I plan on being there too, a majority of the board is planning on having the voters being given prohibition options.
Right. Because I can see people wanting to pencil whip the,
And I'm
Zoning.
assuming and a 3% tax option.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. One small item associated with this, we need to have a vote on amending the closing date for special town meeting to August 15th. It currently closes on August 1. If we want to have the first meeting in August available to discuss these warrant articles, we need to move the closing date back 2 weeks.
You mean what Mr. Ryan suggested at the last meeting?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. He already pointed it out.
I just want to make sure it was pointed out on the record.
Yeah, data.
So,
It-
is there a motion?
Yes, please.
But I'm just looking at this special town meeting milestones that was handed out tonight. It says on Wednesday, August 15th, the Stow Independent issue runs with a legal ad announcing FinCom public hearing.
Yes.
So it's not on here. A warrant I see, but it's way back up there. Oh, it's just, okay, caught me, I see.
They can announce their public hearing without the actual warrant language.
No, I understand, I'm sorry, I just couldn't find it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do find it here now, I'm sorry, thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we revise our schedule,
Closing warrant.
that we allowed last week to close the warrant on August 1st and now make it Wednesday, August 15th for closing warrant articles. Second.
Motion made and seconded to amend the closing date for the special town meeting warrant from August 1 to August 15, 2018. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is unanimous. Going back to item 10, the discussion and vote on the permit for the rec department's boating program. We have some materials in your packet.
Mr. Chairman, the Lake Boone Commission rules, archaic as they are, stipulate, some paraphrasing, that there shall be no boat rentals on the waters of Lake Boone unless it has been granted a commercial permit by the Board of Selectmen upon the recommendation of the Board upon recommendation of the Lake Boone Commission. This was drawn up in an era when things were probably contemplating and probably actually many such establishments. There are no commercial establishments now because of the zoning around the lake. However, a couple of years ago, it was brought to our attention that the Rec Commission was renting boats without this licensure. And this is just coming back for an annual renewal of that license authority. The Lake Boone Commission at its last meeting voted, met with Laura Reno. We expressed some concerns about the particulars of the way the program would be administered. There were some lake residents that had concern about boaters, kayakers not knowing what they're doing, getting in the way of the lake people. We had a fairly extensive discussion with her, brought to her attention that they need to do some more educating through their staff at the beach that authorizes the rentals. And based upon that, the commission unanimously voted to request or to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that its annual license be issued. And this is just accomplishing that.
We did that last year, right?
Yes.
Yes, last 2 years.
Then on the recommendation of the Lake Boone Commission, I move to grant a commercial use permit to the Stow Recreation Department for its boating program for Camp Stow and the town beach for the 2018 season and valid through December 31st, 2018.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to grant a commercial use permit to the Stow Rec Department for its boating program, Camp Stow and the Town Beach for 2018 season through December 31, 2018. Further discussion?
Just administrator, didn't we have a,
Yeah.
something,
Different.
yeah, that.
Right.
Are we gonna, if
It
we
was
pass
not in the
this,
packet, but
are
I
we gonna
remember
sign this?
today. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm, and display.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. And that is unanimous.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Burke.
if I'm not mistaken, we have two major items on our agenda for the rest of it, for the rest of our meeting, which is all the various appointments and the town administrator's report.
Yes, we can go to town administrator.
Does it make sense?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Bill, you want to do your report?
Anxiously awaiting to do that.
Yeah, well, never forget.
It's not even 9 o'clock.
I'm 64 now.
It's a long
I'm
way out there.
77.
Now, well, I'll switch places, you can drive an hour when I get up at 5. How's that? Anyway, Scott Morse is retiring. He's dedicated several decades of devotion to purpose and a can-do attitude that you don't find much in people anymore. They just don't make them like Scott Morse anymore. We'll all miss him.
Yeah, he's a
but
good guy.
I'll miss him a great deal because Scott Morse is one of the few people I never had to worry about, ever. Took the initiative, did the right things for the right reason, and if he wasn't given instructions, he made up his own. And he's done it with devotion over several decades in more than one position. So I, for one, want to salute Scott Morse in a special way, and the process
Give
is
him
set
a
up.
certificate of appreciation, last meeting, come on.
But this is the town
You want me to
administrator's
speak about it?
peons to him.
I'm not talking about you.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, we've got a process started to replace him. I've outlined it's the same as every other process, and we'll come to the board at the recommending authority soon with a replacement. Okay?
Just wanted to get you home, Mr. Townsend.
Bolton TV issue, I just want to give you a general heads up that there's been a matter that's been lingering for some period of time with regard to the cable casting of school committee meetings. Not intending to go into the details here, I just wanted to give you an update. I'm hopeful that things will have been resolved before school starts in the fall. The town administrators from the 3 towns are engaged, as are the local TV and folks, and just want to make sure you didn't miss the information in case you get asked about those matters. Last thing is I just wanted to update you on the fact that about last October, I came to you to say that there were analyticals being done, water testing down at Lake Boone because TCE had been found in some of the drinking water wells. That process continues. I gave you some of the numbers then, 58, 14, 9. They're doing a second round. They being DEP, has offered free filtration systems to be put in the 5, and 3 more are going to be done. They've now started the second round and they've widened the search pattern some just to see if they can, find it. But I think they've circled it. Just wanted to give you that update. DEP works with our Board of Health and the rest of it. And the affected folks have been engaged with both our Board of Health and DEP on the matter. And that's it.
Thank you. And I guess it's my job to say, seeing as how does anyone have any objection that the town administrator was to wing his way back to the friendly town?
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And we'll probably still beat you home, right? Huh? We'll probably still beat you home.
Just curious, have you counted out yet the number of meetings you've got left?
Have a safe trip.
All right.
I bet somewhere.
When I was a short timer in the military many years ago, you did have a calendar with some days. I'm not saying I'm a short timer yet, but.
Good night, Bill.
Good night, Bill, thank you.
All right, the appointments. So, I know we all look forward to this. You've got two, go ahead, you've got 2 approaches here.
Give us the one that's quickest first.
Is there no way we can just say, as listed? I mean, it's posted outside,
The whole list is posted?
the whole list is posted on the bulletin board.
No.
I guess
posted with the record, but
No, the list of appointments is not.
Isn't the list of appointments posted?
For
we
this
did,
agenda?
we did a list them, yeah, was,
Yeah. Well,
Not
other
sure
than
if
new
it's
open
still up
meeting
there.
law requirements, that, I thought that made sense.
So where is it posted, like on the bulletin board at the
Outside.
entrance? So all of these pieces of paper are posted?
No.
Just this
One
big,
version.
long list with all these
Yeah,
in
but that's
small type.
5 different pieces of paper.
I
Are you
know.
saying they're all posted?
Yeah, I thought so. There's a big, long list.
she had a long, Phoebe had this long,
Yeah.
Santa's list, it was skinny.
Oh.
I mean,
It was on the other side.
it's
It's a safe way to do this.
we don't wanna screw it up, so, who's gonna make the motion, and that person can pick how they wanna do it.
I'll do it because there is one minor change.
Yes,
I
okay.
have to.
So
that
which
has to
one
be
are you
made.
So
version?
which one are you
So
gonna
that
do?
suggestion was my.
Version one?
Option one, because it's a little more logic, if you don't have the one-year appointments.
Fine.
Is everybody good with that?
So this is the one where you're grouping the 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
and 5-year appointments, okay, yeah, that does make sense.
All right.
Yeah, here you go.
I move to make the following appointments of individuals and committee members, the positions having been duly posted and for which applicants have applied. 1-year appointments with terms ending June 30th, 2019. Complete Streets Committee, Margie Lynch. Recreation Commission, Samantha Altieri, Eric Bactel, Michael Bush, Dan Nicholson, Eric Sullivan. Emergency Management Officer, Fire Chief Joseph Landry. Fence Viewers, the Selectmen. Hudson Light and Power Representative, Arnold Epstein. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, MAGIC, Selectmen's Representative, Don Hawks. Massachusetts Area Regional Transport, Mark Allison Toole. Street Numberers, Catherine Desmond. Tree Warden, Bruce Fletcher. Veterans Graves Committee, Martha Monroe and Tom Zaborski. Town Council, Huggins and Witten LLC. Superintendent of Streets, Michael Clayton. Full-time firefighters, John Paul Benoit, Captain. Barry Evers, firefighter EMT. Mark Guerin, firefighter EMT and call lieutenant. Gregory Vogel, firefighter EMT. Firefighter EMT, admin, call training lieutenant, Judson Swimmer. We just did him, so.
So, I'm sorry, on the full-time firefighters,
Right.
did you add a person?
Mark Guerin
Yes.
is a full-time firefighter and a call lieutenant.
Okay.
That was what was missing from
Okay.
there.
And we have to do Justin Swimmer again because we only appointed a call training lieutenant, not firefighter EMT.
Got it.
Yeah, good point.
And I had confirmed that with Chief Landry earlier today, just to make sure.
I noticed he didn't decide to wait till the end. All right, go ahead, sorry.
Call firefighter EMTs, Michael Semeka, call lieutenant, Eric Benoit, call lieutenant, Matthew Olson, call lieutenant, Jeremy Ferranti, Jason Alfaro, Suzanne Silversky, Jeffrey Lyons, Keith Villa, Paul Dudley, Todd Jacobek, Christina Ellis, Timothy Gray, Andrew Bolton, James Kelly, Nicholas Trioli, Camden Herlihy, and Matthew Tufo. Call firefighters, Barrett Dilling, Scott Dwinell, Greg Silverio, Kevin Benoit, George Nunez, Jeffrey Stupak, Peter Casello, Jonathan Gray, Seamus Fenton, Jonathan Beharel, Matthew Lowe, Kevin Shepard, and Uris Mangolds. Apprentice firefighters Steve Landry and Eddie Warren. Special police officers James Banatowski, Robert Blanton, Jonathan Butler, Cody Costa, Jonathan Connors, John Fantasia, Lee Herron, Richard Manley, Brandon Murphy, Gary Murphy, Michael Smith, Darlene Treffery, and Mark Treffery. Prisoner watch duty, Deborah Richardson and Darlene Treffery. Public safety dispatchers, Jonathan Butler, John Fantasia, Brandon Murphy, Darlene Treffery, and part-time Aaron Loftus.
We get a spelling on those? Second.
no, wait a minute, wait.
Stow Municipal Affordable Housing
Yeah.
Trust. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
This is
Cynthia
what we're
Burke.
doing.
2-year appointments. You have to read that.
You wanna say 2 years?
Oh, I'm sorry. 2-year appointments with terms ending on June 30th, 2020. Thank you very much. Stow Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, Cynthia Perkins. Springfest Organizing Committee, Maura Highland, Sherry Jusaim, and Sarah Salamone. Local Access Channel Advisory Committee, Brian Burke, Selectmen. Jeff Cronenberg, Barb Glorioso, Lisa Lavina, and Lee Pappas. 3-year appointments with terms ending on June 30th, 2021. Agricultural Commission, Kathy Steggy. Cemetery Trustees, Kenny Banks. Conservation Commission, Nicole McGratchy, Jeffrey Saunders. Historical Commission, Andrew Crosby. Open Space Committee, Eve Donahue and Robert Wilbur. Trustee of the Randall Relief Fund and Randall Town Fund and Town Farm Fund, Louise Peacock. 5-year appointments with terms ending on June 30th, 2023. Economic Development and Industrial Commission, Jean-Claude Sereau. Zoning Board of Appeals, Mark Jones. Zoning Board of Appeals Associate, Charles Barney and Andrew Demore.
Second.
Nice going, Mr. Ryan.
I don't think I butchered too many people. If I did, pardon me.
A motion has been made and seconded to make 1, 2, 3, and 5-year appointments as listed. Further discussion?
Just for the record, Phoebe came up with this alternative, which I think expedited. If we had, traditionally, we have done all of the others, which had to have all those dates repeated. It would have taken another 10 minutes. So
And
heads up,
Thank
heads
you,
up,
Phoebe.
Phoebe.
I think it's less confusing this way. Very good. Thank you, Phoebe. Okay, further discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the appointments as listed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Okay, excellent. Liaison assignments, anybody not happy, anybody
Well,
want to
we
make
held
any
this
changes?
over last time because Ingeborg was.
We held it over because Ingeborg
Yeah,
wasn't here.
thank you, I apologize for that.
You don't apologize.
We don't vote these anyway, right?
Mr. Burke created this myth that it's the chair's prerogative. There's no such thing.
It was an executive order, Mr. Chair.
That's what Brian tried to pass.
I believe in the power of the people, so I want to vote ultimately, yes, or at least a consensus. Does anybody want to make any changes? Does anybody need any more time to look at it?
I'd like to ask some, so I was wondering, we started this conversation about how did we finish the conversation about how to be a liaison? Because I know we started it, but then we hadn't properly posted it, so we didn't finish it. Or is it just a choice that we, as the liaison, determine our own way of being a liaison? Like, we can coordinate with the chair, but we don't have to go to all meetings, is that, did we finalize that discussion?
So I thought we did.
Okay.
I thought we
Thank you.
started it at one meeting when it wasn't posted, then we
Right.
posted it, and then we had a discussion.
So
and I
we're
thought
good.
We were all satisfied, you don't need to go to the
all the
meetings.
meetings,
You can
okay.
go have coffee, you can make a phone call, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make any changes?
Well, I was just gonna ask Tom if you are very involved with the Board of Health.
I've been planning on trying to get more involved
Okay,
with
that's
them,
fine.
but
Yep.
I haven't been.
Okay, just because if you were wanting to pass one on, I'd be happy to take that, but if you're happy to take it, you'll not say anything more.
What I'll do is I'll see how things go with, I haven't really done much with them, and I keep thinking that I need to,
Okay.
a little bit
Just-
more.
Just let me know. All right, then I have no further comments.
Okay.
This is the sort of thing we could come up later,
Right.
you know.
Oh, it can
mid-season
totally
trade.
come up later.
Oh, but we'll have to have a vote.
Just for that.
Oh, are you gonna give
I'll
one?
entertain a motion to keep it as it is for now.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to keep it as it is for now.
Keep it as
As it is for now.
For now.
I abstain.
Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
And abstentions, 1. Please record Mr. Burke abstained.
Mr. Burke's
And why
being
was that?
stubborn.
Because you still think it
Because
should be
he-
by executive order?
I'm confident in the chair's purpose.
Because Mr. Erdogan believes in the authoritarian,
Did you call him to congratulate him on his?
stunning victory. No, we still gotta work on the certificate for his chairmanship. We still gotta do that. Liaison reports, has anyone been doing any liaising?
Yes.
It is in summer. Mr. Burke, we'll start with you.
I'm going to start first off with, I'll try to keep this brief, as I always do. FinCom met, a couple of times I've met with them once. They're formulating some of the grand philosophical ideas that they want to present to us outside the regular budget meetings, such as OPEB, better use of revolving, or different use of revolving funds, or more expansive. And I suggested that they all come to some kind of a discussion, agreement on those, and they come to us when they've got their results, and they want to inform us what their ideas are. As far as Tri-Town, the town administrator spoke about this. It's a crying shame. The school committee got it in their heads about December last year that they weren't going to pay out of their own budget for the filming of their school committee meetings, meaning that they weren't going to hire a high school student, and Bolton somehow dug in, saying, no, we shouldn't pay for it. And I've been telling our LACAC that if we ever have a Tri-Town meeting, I will put this on our agenda, I'll put this on the agenda. And that's about the only use that I can think of for Tri-Town, would be something like this, and we haven't had a Tri-Town meeting in 6 months. And now it's gone up, there are letters flying back and forth, the town administrators have got involved. It's a shame. It was the one thing that Tri-Town could possibly accomplish would be for everybody to sit down and say, how are we gonna film these school committee meetings, who's gonna pay for it? And it's still hanging around.
But we haven't had a Tri-Town meeting, why?
Lancaster kept coming up with obstacles. It was their turn to do it. And there were conflicts because the school committee, during its frantic year-end
Yeah.
budget preparations and then a reduced summer schedule, et cetera, just haven't been able to get these. Traditionally, Tri-Town never meets in the summer, so we've just kind of lost a whole season in this Burke's point.
I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Hawks. I know it's your assignment. I know we just voted on that assignment. I urge commandeering it. Maybe not scheduling it for the summer, but, telling Lancaster, we're gonna have this thing on September, something or other, and you're not gonna host it, we're gonna host it. And Burke's kids will bring cupcake, if it's in Stow.
It's worth a shot. Pick a date, see who shows up.
That's my recommendation to our Tri-Town liaison.
Mr. Hawks.
The food commission's meeting Thursday night. That's it.
The EDIC has their job fair. I finally made it to a meeting of theirs. It was great, and I like the track that they're on. They're a good bunch. Mr. Ryan.
I had planned on mentioning the Stow Youth and Fire Academy, but you beat me to it.
I did that.
So, but one of the things that I did notice is I don't think last year that it was police and fire. I think last year it was just a police
Well, that's
academy.
true.
And so they're working together and.
It's more ecumenical.
Yep, so it's,
Ecumenical.
we go from.
But we're throwing out a lot of
Birkin.
words here.
And the thing is, one of the things I didn't remember from last year, apparently they did do it, was a community service project, which I think is a great thing, so. But I think you've got the original letter. Maureen actually has it, if anybody's interested, you could send it around to everybody, but it lists down the whole schedule that they've got, flag raising every day. I think it's being very well done, so.
Any chance of getting our chair in there?
Ms. Hagan. Hey, all you gotta do is redefine youth. That's not Social Security eligible. I'm in.
And some great Formula 16.
So the Conservation Commission has been busy as ever. SMOT had to reschedule their meeting because they didn't post it properly, and I don't know when the next one is. And I'll have to be in touch with the Rec Commission. That's it.
Excellent. Is there a motion?
And just for the record, again, you're gonna be away for the next 2 meetings.
Oh, I am away for the next 2 meetings, yes. So
And,
next meeting I'm here on.
Clerk will be sitting in the
She will be.
hot seat.
The dates, just confirm those dates, hopefully.
The second and fourth
Second and
fourth. So the
Tuesdays of
10th
July, 10th and
And
24th.
24th. Let me just confirm.
And I will be back for the first meeting in August, which is the 14th.
So if there is anything particularly egregious that Jim's kind of decided in the last
I
month or so?
can
6
reverse
weeks.
that.
Reverse, you can
6
reverse.
weeks.
We'll bring up the liaison appointment when he's gone.
Listen, the last 6 weeks hasn't been nearly as egregious as the year before that.
So, can I ask?
I move to adjourn,
I'm
it's not
kidding.
debatable.
Can I ask
So
a
kidding.
question?
Second.
I'm so kidding. Pardon?
I have to ask a question. So you prepare the agenda with our town administrator, is that correct?
I'll go over what
Okay,
to do
fine.
with you.
And Maureen.
It's- Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Maureen can give you a lot of help, and I can be here, I'll be around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now,
Even though I'm
now you can
egregious.
call for the motion. Actually, it's been motioned and seconded, so you can
I
call
have
for the
one
vote.
question.
Oh,
When you're
sorry.
away for vacation and whatnot, do you like to receive the packets anyways?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if you kept.
Can we put that on the record?
Okay.
Can we put that on the record?
That's all, no.
I'm gonna be
everybody
biking 115 miles a day, and you think at the end of the day I'm gonna?
Not that
Yeah.
vacation, but for other.
Historical purposes, you might wanna open this thing up and look at it when you come back.
That's all.
You saved?
To
Same
archive.
thing, you think I'm gonna get done this and come back and,
Okay.
oh, let me take a look at,
Call the vote, Mr. Chair.
in all favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.